Tonight, a question of emotion. The Prime Minister reveals the referendum wording for the Indigenous voice to Parliament.
I say to Australia, don't miss it. Don't miss it.
Also tonight, an army chopper ditches during a training exercise. Storms sweep across the state, catching people by surprise. And a rare little bundle of joy tipping the scales at 60 kilos. Good evening. Tamara O'Dine with ABC News. An emotional Anthony Albanese has released the wording that will be put to the federal parliament on the referendum question for an Indigenous voice. If legislation passes, Australians will be asked if they approve of altering the Constitution later this year. The question reads, a proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. The government says the process to get to this point has been cooperative and respectful, but there are still some concerns within the parliament.
A moment years in the making.
I'm here to change the country.
Today, the starter's gun has been fired.
The weight of the wording not lost on those who developed it, or the Prime Minister.
The process of getting to this point isn't top down, it's bottom up. There's a whole lot of things that we do in this place that no one will remember in a year's time or a day's time. This matters.
Agreement was reached last night and signed off by Cabinet this morning, with a few tweaks from the announcement at last year's Garma Festival. Australians will now be asked a proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Do you approve this proposed alteration? The constitutional amendment has also changed, now saying the voice may make representations to the Parliament and the executive government of the Commonwealth.
We have words here that put beyond doubt the power of the Australian Parliament.
The sentiment from those standing alongside the Prime Minister clear.
Collectively on this stage, we've been around a very, very long time. We've seen the good and the bad. This is good.
This requires all Australians. We need your help.
We implore all Australians to unite behind us.
We're here to draw a line in the sand and say this has to change, people's lives have to improve. And we know from the evidence that what improves people's lives is when they get a say.
The wording getting a mixed reaction from the public.
No, it's not clear to me exactly what is entailed in all of that.
I think it's a complete and utter waste of time and energy and money.
Yeah, that's mad as. That's so good.
Back in Canberra, not everyone is satisfied.
I do think it's in the national interest for the Solicitor General's advice to be released, and then it can be considered.
There was a message for the opposition about politicising the process.
Indigenous people will be watching. We want this to be above politics. We are tired of having our lives used as a political football.
With the referendum due between October and December, there are still months of campaigning ahead on the voice. The Prime Minister acknowledging today that while not everyone will choose to vote yes, he hopes the debate can remain factual and respectful and not a source of division in the community.
We're not a homogenous group as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We're going to have parts of our community that don't agree, but we carry a responsibility to make sure we bring them along on this journey.
A long journey to an important vote. Dana Morse, ABC News, Canberra.
With the wording all but settled, campaigning can continue in earnest to convince Australians to vote for or against the constitutional amendment. The challenge of change is not lost on the Prime Minister. Just 8 of 44 referendums have been successful, and he'll be hoping a contemporary electorate is up for reform. The ABC's referendum correspondent Dan Borscher looks at the road ahead.
The Prime Minister has gone all in with his government and its referendum advisory group to frame the question they will put to the people later this year. But this is just the start. Anthony Albanese will be hoping he can achieve what no other Prime Minister has in decades, constitutional reform. But he must put his trust in voters and the grassroots campaigners to sell the case for yes. Win or lose, it will be defining for him. But there's also a lot at stake for Peter Dutton, who recently apologised for turning his back on the apology to members of the Stolen Generation and whose party remains divided on whether to support The Voice. But there's something bigger at stake here than political legacy. It's about who we are as a nation and whether Australians will embrace an opportunity to debate a new chapter or fall back into another culture war.